Okay, so we've come across a fallen tree. We read in some survival books that they make great shelters. You can build a fire against them. Well, I'm sure in some environments and some instances you can. But as you can see from this one, after a good rainfall, there might be a flaw in their plan. So after a bit of searching, a bit of scouting around, this is where I'm going to make my shelter. I tested it and put a lot of weight on it. Should be fine. The direction behind it is north, so I'll be facing south, and with a little bit of cleanup and maybe chopping up that old rotten log, I'll be able to build a fire area. If I go further this way, 200 yards, then I'm dead in the middle of swamp. So this is high ground. It's just not very high ground. So the $2 saw is going to get some use. I'm going to clean up this. So the saw does actually work quite well. Alright, so you can see I've got probably 8 poles there, and I got a couple of logs on the ground that I can eventually make into a raised bed. Just one log over by the fire to use as a reflector, which I'll have to work on. But now I thought, well, I'm going to switch gears and actually enclose the shelter in. So I'm going to use a combination of the tarps and the space blanket to try to make it nice and cozy inside if it gets cold. So here's the start of the reflector. Ooh, here's our little fire. And inside the shelter are 2 poles that we could run some branches between and make a bunk. May or may not do that. We have a couple of really small tarps, and then we have the space blanket. So I kind of misjudged on this. If it was getting dark, I would have to live with this mistake. But what we'll do is we'll try to make some adjustments to it later on. What I tried doing was not make it with any cordage at all, and pretend the cordage had dropped out of my pocket, and just used weights and branches and sticks and things like that. So where we are, the real disadvantage is the wetness. There's no rocks, but we have lots of birch bark, as I had mentioned, and we have lots of fallen trees. So I think we could probably fill up the back end of that quite nicely. But tonight, what we'll have to do, if this wasn't a simulation, is keep this burning with branches off of standing trees. And here's 2 spruce trees that are fairly dry, and within 50 yards of here, 50 meters of here, there's probably 4 more, which should give me a lot of heat and keep the fire going for quite a while. And here's our birch bark burning, some of our wet twigs. Anyway, I'm not sure if you can make it out from the camera, but the fire is reflecting off the space blanket. It is quite warm in the shelter. I mean, you're almost breaking a sweat. What I'm trying to do now is just burn off some wood and try to dry things off and just get the dampness out. And then I was able to get the space blanket tightened up so it's going to act as a reflector. It is warm in there. It is hot, actually. It's like take your shirt off hot in there. And I'll spare you guys all that. Seeing how I had no ties, I had to throw a lot of dead wood in around. The whole back end needed about a foot. So I found some rotten wood and just piled it on top of the frame that I had. It filled in really nicely. When I have more time, I can just dig that up, fill it in real nice up to that part, and it's going to be a nice insulated part. I'll find a few more pieces, fill in the sides, and then maybe build the bunk inside. But if I was staying here tonight, I got about an hour of good daylight. I've got to get 6 or 7 more of those over here. It's real damp today, and I thought instead of following the $25 rule, the $25 shopping spree rules, I would go ahead and try to do a fire using flint and steel. Everything's really damp, so it's going to be a real good test. I'm going to use extra char cloth and a little bit of jute twine I had in the kit. That's some of the char cloth I had just made on the barbecue. I might make some more out today. The jute cloth works wonderfully. Whew. Well, it's been a long day at work, and I didn't want to spend all my time doing the $25 challenge, so I thought I'd have a light supper in the house and then do a loaf of bannock. So what I have in the bag here is 1 cup of flour, a tablespoon of baking soda, some cinnamon, some nutmeg, and some powdered milk. So I'm just going to knead that right inside the bag because it's cleaner that way. Anyway, after a little bit of working, here's what I got. And it's going on the fire. I'm going to put it directly on the fire for a moment, and then I'm going to check the temperature and then perhaps lean it up against the reflector. Just giving the fire a little bit of boost. I'm just finishing boiling up some water to have some coffee. The brown tin, you can see some smoke coming off of that. You can recognize that. I'm just making some more char cloth. And as I said, just going to boil up some coffee, let the bannock finish cooking, and then sort of do a little bit of a rundown on some of the things that we went through. The flashlight worked okay. The lighters, of course, were a great success. The knife worked quite well. Kept it in the plastic, so I had a sheath, so it'd be less of a cutting danger. The cordage, well, I only used about 20 to 30 centimeters of it, about a foot. The stainless steel bowl was quite useful. I used it to collect and boil water. The stove I didn't need to use, but had I had to stay here last night, I probably would have had to use it for a short period of time. So I was pretty happy with everything that I got. The only thing I might change perhaps is maybe instead of getting a $2 flashlight, get a $1 candle, maybe 2 candles, maybe swap out the T for a compass, as one of the people that watched the videos suggested. That would have been a good idea. But all in all, pretty good. A second space blanket might have been really nice, and larger tarps. The ones I had were only 4x6, so they were rather small and insufficient for the job. Anyway, time for some coffee and finish off the last of the bannock. Well, the bannock looks done. Char cloth is still, well, it's probably done too. But I guess it wouldn't hurt to leave it by the fire a little longer. Well, campfire smoke, bannock, strong coffee, and maple syrup. It just doesn't get any better than that. So let's let the fire burn out. I'm just going to go over the camp one more time. I built up the reflector into a third wall, so that would be a good size. I think it's about the right distance from the shelter itself. And again, the shelter is a couple tarps, a space blanket. I filled in that side with some dead wood, and the bottom part of the thing with dead wood. This side still needs to be filled in, and the bed needs to be filled in with either spruce boughs or a bunk of some sort. Tried to take advantage of the natural materials around. I didn't want to use too many spruce boughs. It wasn't a survival situation, so I don't mind using rotten wood, but no need to kill too many trees just for the sake of me having a little bit of fun after work. But some good lessons I learned today, or over the last few days. Anyway, so I guess the next step from here is disassembly and salvaging the pieces and coming up with a new shelter. Perhaps one of the super shelters where you build a raised bed and using little saplings make a dome, and the space blanket reflects the heat from a small fire. Anyway, I'll be glad to actually be able to bring my axe or my hatchet into the woods, my small pack, and my regular gear. I certainly miss having a real knife and not just using a paring knife. Alright, time to finish drinking up my coffee, putting out my fire, and then head home. Thanks for watching.